It's funny because the pivot also came at a time where I was nearly ready to give up on what we were doing as a business, and it was just, we were just in business for 2 months. It was February, and the way we made our product then, the whole process was completely different from the way we make it today. We're using these champion juicers, but just to give you the short version, it took about 2 days of prep to freeze up our product to get it ready, just so we would, and still after that we would have to come into the food truck in the morning, and it would take another 3 hours every morning to produce these bins, which at that time were a scoopable banan product. And I was just really frustrated. It was, I'd gone to business school, and I felt like I had just embarked on a business that would be impossible to scale and extremely labor intensive and not profitable, not financially sustainable at all. And it was at this time that actually one of our co-founders, who's not with us now, was eating out at Pig and the Lady and having dessert there, and he tasted this sorbet that used a machine similar to like a soft serve machine, and was telling us about it. And soon we just kind of shut down the whole food truck for a week and went into this product development phase for a couple weeks, where we got to go out to a factory in Compilation and use what is traditionally used for kind of a dairy soft serve where you're pouring in a liquid. We, I don't know, tested it with bananas and fruit, and ended up having to modify this machine that was, before banan came into the world, had a completely different use and purpose. But that was definitely an extreme pivot that we took, and we definitely wouldn't be here today if we hadn't made that kind of bold pivot just 2 months into business. We were very unsure at the time, and I should also mention that we were going from using machines that cost $300 that would mash up our frozen bananas and turn it into our product, to machines that would end up costing $20,000 per piece to do 2 flavors. So it was a very big jump for us. Yeah.
I don't know if Pono Home has really pivoted all that much at this point. I think we're heading into a pivot, which is pretty interesting. So we've been doing a lot of residential energy efficiency and figuring that out. But in the process of building the systems behind Pono Home, which was built for franchising. And so I've built inventory management, software for people, for franchisees to do service checklists, invoicing, bidding, auditing, inventory management. All these things are built in the back end of our software. And as a result of seeing that that's the number one thing that franchisees really wanted, the branding, the marketing tools, all the rest of that stuff was not as appealing for them. Seeing that that software could be repositioned into a software as a service model has kind of gotten me going down this path now, where we're going to be selling software as a service and training through homeefficiency.com, which is one of the websites we purchased, that any entrepreneur anywhere can start a home efficiency business under a white label using all of our back-end systems and our software without having to buy a Pono Home franchise. So that is a pretty good-sized pivot right now that I'm pursuing at the moment.
The major pivot for us was getting the contract for the airports. Well, actually the Honolulu one, because they're all separate contracts. But when we got the contract for that, it really validated us as a company that we're here to stay. And I think that's very important here in Hawaii, because there's so much of a transit community. People come in with great ideas, they go, gung-ho, and they face struggles or problems and they leave. And I think people are wary of that. And so when we had the contract and it was for 7 years, they knew that we were going to be here at least for 7 years. So that made it a lot easier for us to to go out and sell. And there's also some of that mentality here that people don't want to be the first ones. They want to know, what else you're doing, who else is doing it, and when we mentioned that, oh yeah, we have the contract for the airport, they're like, oh, okay, well, tell me more. So I think that helped our business a bunch.
I guess, when we first started with the mobile website, it was about customer acquisition, how we're going to get people to start using the app. And we were trying to get pretty gritty and pretty creative around getting the word out. So we worked with a lot of wineries up in Napa so that they would feature the mobile website. Worked with a lot of these big wine tasting events because, those kind of flimsy booklets you get when you go to a wine tasting, you're like scribbling down with like a pencil, your tasting notes, you end up spilling wine on it and then throw it away at some point. So we were working with some big wine events to try to help get the word out and utilize, like, people could rate their wines live on their phone versus scribbling it down on some, flimsy book they would essentially lose. The big pivot was when the iPhone, of course, we decided to make the app and really focus all of our energy on building this kind of awesome wine app that, not only could you rate the wine that you've had to drink, you could kind of create that little black book of wine, create those flavor profiles and food pairing advice. So we really got kind of tech heavy and that kind of UI UX. And once we were able to do that, really focus on that revenue generation of the downloads. So we kind of pivoted from kind of being more community based to like very focused on the tech and the app, and then actually being able to utilize some of that community that we had built to get the word out and to get people to download and rate the app. So I would say, I guess that is a major pivot, is essentially the app.
Yeah, so I think with any kind of small business, especially if things are fluctuating, you're constantly pivoting. So one of the things for us was a pivot where we had to purchase the refrigerated van for doing the CSA deliveries, but then a pivot for us from there was we had this asset, this resource, refrigerated van, so thinking of other ways to have that working, where initially it was only working 2 days out of the week. The rest of the time it was sitting there. So that's where we started doing more picking up from farms and then delivering product for them, and then also sourcing more product for restaurants. So it was kind of looking at the core of what we're really doing, where we're not really doing a CSA, even though that's how we started, but really what we're doing is being that matchmaker between local produce, helping produce get from the farm to its final destination. And that could be a CSA, restaurant, or any kind of store, depending on where the farmers markets are. And so that was a pivot in the sense of really revisiting and kind of looking at what we're doing at a higher level than just one single revenue stream.
One of them would probably be when I had my first child. It's crazy. So I was making soap, with a baby on my back. I have a great photo of that. I had to hire the first person and then really let go of my company and allow somebody else to help me. And so now we have 4 people working with us, and it's still a really small operation, but the first time of letting everything out of your control is a big step, and it took a while to get used to, but now I can't live without all the people that make the company happen, so yeah.
I would say a major pivot for me was finding who my customers are. Originally, one of the products I was selling was jams and local jams and butters, like lilikoi jam, guava jam, and that was for local people. Tourists do like them a lot, and I sold a lot to tourists, but the locals like it a lot, so I'd find myself stuck in local markets where I wasn't doing as much sales. And then I started with this macadamia nut product, and locals they don't need mac nuts. So they go to the store, they buy them themselves, they're not that interesting. So then I found that the tourists love the mac nuts. So I'm like, okay, well, let me focus on the tourists. And once I started focusing on tourists and also Japanese tourists, sales just spiked like crazy because I was attacking the market that I should have been attacking the whole time. So I wasn't wasting my time at these small little local markets. I mean, they're great, but not for my specific product. If you want to sell produce, you're a small farmer, go to a small market. People love you. Go to Mililani, it's great. But if you're trying to sell a bunch of macadamia nuts, and especially to like Japanese tourists and people like that, well, go to Waikiki because that's where they're at. So once I started narrowing in and focusing on what market I want to sell to, it was a game changer.
So a major pivot, like I said before, was originally it was supposed to be me traveling. So on the way back from Brazil, I thought, okay, these cool teacher training seminars, maybe I could do those online, and maybe we could do in-person cultural immersions as well as online. So I love to travel, so I think I was stuck on this idea of me and people actually traveling to the countries. And through the Accelerate program, I interviewed about 300 customers. And the feedback I got was they would rather just have the online classes because they're more accessible, they're more economically friendly, and that's what they were most interested in. So we scratched the idea of actually doing teacher training and in-person workshops for students, and we're just focusing on the online.